Now, let's take a look at what exactly Hunter Biden is being accused of. Let's backtrack to the 2020 presidential election. That's when Hunter Biden's business dealings caught the public's attention. The New York Post reported on Hunter Biden's overseas activities in Ukraine and China. After that, one of his former associates, Tony Bobulinski, came forward about an alleged business venture between him, Hunter Biden, the president's brother, Jim Biden, and CEFC China Energy. The Chinese conglomerate has deep ties to the Chinese Communist Party. Bobulinski strongly suggested that the firm engaged Hunter to gain access to his father, Joe Biden, then vice president. Soon after, Twitter banned the sharing of links to the New York Post article, and Facebook limited the article's reach. Now, back to what Hunter Biden is accused of. It's not just China. From 2014 to 2019, Hunter Biden served on the board of a Ukrainian gas firm, Burisma Holdings, and for a reportedly high monthly salary. Reports note Hunter had no experiences working in that industry before, and the Ukrainian company itself was the subject of a corruption investigation in the country. Republicans and Trump accused Joe Biden of knowing about his son's role at the company. That's over Biden's public statements about getting a Ukrainian prosecutor fired when he was vice president under the Obama administration. This prosecutor was the one who was investigating Burisma Holdings. Joe Biden said this move was related to rooting out corruption that has long plagued the country. He also denied that he knew about his son's business dealings in both Ukraine and China. On the flip side, then President Trump became the subject of a House Democrat-led impeachment effort. That's after it was revealed that Trump asked Ukraine's president to look into the matter regarding the Bidens. Trump was then accused of being engaged in a quid pro quo scheme. Stuck under Shanghai's lockdown, some locals decided enough was enough. A video clip started circulating online last weekend, capturing a crowd of residents breaking out of their quarantine compound. According to the person who shared the video, the residents just wanted to leave the area to buy groceries. Another similar clip was posted on Monday, showing people rushing out of a quarantine site. The man who shot the video gave more details. He explained that the building has been under lockdown for 4 days, adding, quote, "There's absolutely no food. People are starving and cannot bear it anymore." The situation appeared to escalate soon after, involving both a crowd of protesters and local police. In the clip, a man can be heard saying the police want to arrest people, but people won't let the police do it. It seems testing positive for COVID-19 isn't bad enough for these little ones. They are put in quarantine without their parents because policy in Shanghai says they have to be separated. The youngest seen was not even 2 months old. Parents are less than happy. NTD's Dawn Ma has the story.
Just how strict is China's zero COVID policy? If you're a parent and you test negative, but your child tests positive, Chinese authorities will forcibly separate you from your child and put them in a quarantine facility without you. This is what's happening to many parents in Shanghai amid the lockdown. China expert and host of Epoch TV's China Insider, David Zhang, says it's inhumane.
I think it's absolutely devastating for things like these to be happening in China. Lockdowns in China have turned into a secondary humanitarian crisis.
Sources say authorities had taken away hundreds of small children, all of them quarantined separate from their parents. They're put in Shanghai's Jingsan district. People call it Jingsan Infant Quarantine Facility. Videos and photos circulating online show what it looks like there. A photo shows 3 babies packed in one bed, and rows of beds are lined up in a lobby with many kids. Very few have adults with them. A mother had the chance to get into this quarantine site. According to her, some kids are only 2 years old. Even a 58-day-old baby was taken away from its parents and placed here alone. And hygiene conditions are terrible. She said when babies soil themselves, there's not even a place to go to wash them. She estimated that upstairs alone, there were about 200 kids, and only 10 nurses were there taking care of them. But why is China going to such extremes to try to get to zero virus cases? David Zhang says it's about Xi Jinping's image.
As a totalitarian leader, it's very hard for him to walk back any decisions he's made. Xi Jinping is seeking to get a third term, and if Xi Jinping were to reveal that he failed, then that would be a large mistake for the opponents to grab onto to try to stop him from getting his third term.
As public backlash grows stronger, Shanghai authorities are saying they will improve management and, quote, strengthen communication with the children's parents. Don Ma, NTD News.
Western diplomats have expressed concern about separating children from their parents. Diplomats from more than 30 countries have written to the Chinese Foreign Ministry urging authorities not to take such measures. A letter written by the French consulate in Shanghai reads, quote, under no circumstances should parents and children be separated. The British embassy in Beijing said it was concerned that minors were being separated from their parents.
Over the weekend, we had a chance to ask former National Security Advisor under former President Trump, retired General Michael Flynn, about his overall assessment of the Russia-Ukraine war. Here's part of what he had to say. General Michael Flynn, thank you so much for joining us in the Capitol Report.
Steve, thank you.
General, I want to get your thoughts on the Ukraine-Russia war. Big picture, what's your take?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to thank Epoch Times for all that you guys do. I mean, your whole organization, the enterprise that you represent is really extraordinary. Your reporting, your honesty, your authenticity is terrific. So I want to get that on the table for listeners and anybody that needs to know where to find the truth. So, okay, Russia, Ukraine, Europe, what's happening? And at the 60,000 foot level, this was a totally avoidable war. So totally avoidable. This goes back to, I really believe, it goes back a long way, but it really goes back to 1994, what was called the Budapest Accords in Budapest, Hungary, between, at the end of the Cold War, right? At the time it was Gorbachev was the head of the Soviet Union, and the basically the collapse of the Soviet Union. In France, you had Mitterrand. In the United Kingdom, you had Margaret Thatcher. And in the United States, you had George Bush, the father, right? So they had a meeting, and at that meeting, the essential, one of the big ticket items that came out of the Budapest Accords was no further encroachment of NATO against this new Russian Federation, and also that meeting was the decision to unify Germany, both West Germany and East Germany. So some big strategic issues in play, one of which was no more encroachment of NATO up to the Russian Federation frontier and borders. And the reason why is because of the threat. We still had the threat of nuclear weapons and a nuclear exchange. And with whoever was going to be future leaders of any of those nations, we didn't want to get into a potential place where we had nuclear missiles literally right across the boundary of two major nation state, or in the case of a NATO or Europe, in the case between Russia and really the European frontier. We didn't want to have nuclear weapons that close to each other. Makes a lot of sense. Now, Steve, we're in a place where it began. Okay, so now is where mistakes will be made, and mistakes are being made, and people's lives are at risk, and many people have already lost their lives. Because once war begins, the inertia of war creates all kinds of second, third, fourth order effects, because when you start to shoot things in the night, right, and you have all these things that are happening, people make mistakes, right? That's the tragedy of war. The one thing, and we're here in one of our rallies here in Oregon. One of the things I said to the audience this morning is, war is a failure of policy and diplomacy. Okay, war is not something that anybody wants. War is not an opportunity. Okay, as I think Biden stated maybe a week or so ago, it's not an opportunity. War is a failure. It's a failure. Anytime you see states, nation states at war with each other, it's because there's a failure to communicate some way, somehow. And that's what happened.
And I want to get your perspective. You have a unique perspective, both from an intelligence community perspective and being a general. When you heard President Biden's comments about potentially taking out Putin, what effect does that have? What is your understanding of those things?
They know because, and you know, and everybody in the world knows, because immediately after he said it, they had to start walking it back. They had to start walking it back, right? Everybody in his circle had to start walking it back because it's so wrong to say that. We're not talking about some fourth world nation here, third world nation. We're talking about a great nation state that has, you know, many nuclear weapons, that has a large, relatively large economy, not a great economy, but a large economy, has a large population. It encompasses 8 time zones. It has been in historically, culturally. I mean, from a demographic standpoint. I mean, all these sort of big issues. It has been part of the world fabric for years, right? For centuries. So you just can't suddenly go, you know, you're bad and regime change. We need regime change. We need to get rid of Putin. You can't say stuff like that. A president of the United, I mean, I can sit here and say something stupid like that as just somebody, you know, from the former military, outside the military. Now I could say something like that and people go, I didn't know what he's talking about. When the president of the United States makes comments like that, that means a lot.
General Michael Flynn, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Anytime. I appreciate what Epoch Times is doing. God bless you.
Wheat shortages and increasing global fuel prices following the war in Ukraine have left thousands of Tunisians under further strain. This in a country already struggling with political deadlock and a public finance crisis.
As war rages in Ukraine, citizens in Tunisia are wandering between empty supermarket shelves and bread queues amid a deepening political and financial crisis impacting the country. The sharp rise in food prices is being seen firsthand. 58-year-old Lofty has been running a small bakery shop in the Tunisian capital for 20 years and said he can no longer find flour or semolina to bake bread. He says he only worked for 13 days this month.
It's affected us so much we can no longer work. Before this war, I could secure semolina every day, in the range of 50 or 60 kilograms, and make bread. With the war, we can no longer find even a little semolina for us to work with. This is a big crisis.
Tunisia is facing a political and economic crisis at home. The country, which subsidises domestic fuel prices and some foodstuffs, was already seeking a foreign rescue package before the war in Ukraine led to jumps in global prices of certain commodities. It's heading for a default if the current deterioration in its finances continues, investment bank Morgan Stanley has warned. And for everyday citizens like Hassan, life continues to be a struggle.
The shortage of basic commodities and subsidised goods existed before this war, due to smuggling, monopoly and many other things. But now, with this war and the month of Ramadan, there is absolute poverty in Tunisia. We are living in a real crisis.
A small team of IMF staff visited Tunisia last week for further discussions about a possible financing program. An IMF deal is seen as vital to unlock other possible financial assistance from donors that have repeatedly bailed out Tunisia over recent years.
In Odessa, Ukraine, a stealthier war is being fought by volunteers against Russia. Their weapons, keyboards, and coding. NTD's Chenny Wu tells us more.
IT manager Andrew runs a website that enables people around the world to attack Russian websites and online infrastructure from their own computers, even including instruction on how to launch the cyber attacks.
There are many people who can't go into directly to the war and take the guns on their hands and fight in Ukraine lands. That's why we are developing some projects, like IT project for these people, who help them find their way and try to help Ukraine army to win this war.
After Russia invaded Ukraine, the country's Vice Prime Minister Mikhailo Fedorov said Ukraine would create an IT army.
Targets provided by Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine every day, like this. In official chat in Telegram, IT Army of Ukraine.
The Telegram channel listed the websites of 31 major Russian businesses and state organizations, including energy giant Gazprom and Russia's second-largest oil producer, Lukoil. However, it seems the cyber attacks may also be disrupting the lives of Russian civilians.
Attacks that occur from all over the world on the Russian Federation lead to failure of, for example, banking systems. People come to the store and they cannot withdraw cash from ATMs.
Russian government entities and state-owned companies were targeted last month, with the website of the Kremlin among those that have seen outages or temporary access issues. And Russia has accused the U.S. of leading a massive campaign of cyber aggression, saying media, critical infrastructure, and life support systems have been targeted. Chenny Wu, NTD News.
Documents from Pfizer show that the drug maker hired 600 employees in early 2021 to deal with the large increase in reported side effects linked to their vaccine. This was shortly after the FDA authorized Pfizer's vaccine. The document says Pfizer has, quote, taken multiple actions to help alleviate the large increase of adverse event reports. This includes significant technology enhancements and process and workflow solutions, as well as increasing the number of data entry and case processing colleagues. The document came from the first quarter of 2021, and Pfizer did send it to the FDA, but it wasn't made public until the FDA was sued over documents related to their approval process of the Pfizer vaccine. When the document was produced, Pfizer had hired about 600 extra full-time workers to deal with the jump in side effects. And they planned to hire a total of more than 1,800 additional workers by the end of June 2021. Western leaders should break the alliance between Russia and China. This, according to a French professor who says China is becoming a more serious threat if it's backed by Russia. On the other hand, he says the Chinese Communist Party is taking advantage of Washington and Brussels being busy with the Ukraine crisis. NTD's France correspondent David Vives has this report.
What if an alliance between China and Russia could manage to accomplish what no country could do on its own, which is to seriously challenge the US and its allies? Russian President Vladimir Putin is asking so-called unfriendly countries to pay for energy in rubles. China and Russia are pushing the use of cryptocurrency payments. Both of these developments could weaken the US dollar. iNews reported that the two countries might seek to build a new financial world order, where the US dollar is no longer the world's reserve currency. Earlier this week, the Russian and Chinese foreign ministers met in China, where they agreed to expand cooperation. French professor Olivier Tournafont says Russia's support to the Chinese regime poses a serious threat.
China is much more dangerous to us in the West than Russia is, because Russia has no intention of becoming master of the world, whereas China has a global agenda. The Chinese Communist Party must not be allowed to ally itself with Russia, to form a kind of anti-Western bloc that could win.
China abstained in the UN General Assembly vote early March that demanded Russia unconditionally withdraw from Ukraine, and it has refused to condemn the Russian invasion. Some experts point out that Beijing could benefit from the Ukraine war by not taking sides and continuing to trade with Putin. Meanwhile, Beijing is careful not to upset Brussels, as a trade agreement between Beijing and the EU is still at stake. Publishers Mathieu Sirvins points to an article published by Chinese outlet DW News.
Indeed, according to the website DW News, Putin offered the third gift from heaven to China in its recent history. As defined by the newspaper, the first gift from heaven was 9/11, the second, the COVID crisis.
In other words, tackling the pandemic or fighting the war against terrorism has distracted the US administration's attention away from China.
After 9/11, fighting terrorism was a priority for the Bush administration, which turned away from China. As for former US President Trump, he had taken numerous protectionist measures that had hurt the Chinese regime. September 11th and the COVID crisis created what Chinese strategists call a window of opportunity, because China no longer had a target on its back.
Sylvain says the Chinese regime studies the different scenarios that would allow it to be on the winning side. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
A group of senators is trying to stop the Chinese Communist Party from spying on Americans. This as high-profile espionage cases emerge and a major decision by the Biden administration comes under scrutiny. NTD's Iris Tao has more.
Countering espionage by Beijing. That's what Senator Rick Scott, along with 5 other Republican senators, say their latest legislation is trying to do.
Of sending spies to our country to steal sensitive research and trade secrets.
Following earlier discussions on China's threat, Senator Rick Scott on Thursday introduced the Protect America's Innovation and Economic Security from CCP Act. It aims to re-establish the China Initiative at the Department of Justice. The program, established in 2018, seeks to prevent spying by the Chinese Communist Party on American soil.
What the Communist Party of China is doing is they want to control our lives.
But the Biden administration ended the China Initiative in February, replacing it with what it called a broader strategy. But Senator Marco Rubio, a co-sponsor of the bill, calls it a foolish decision. He wrote on Thursday that it diverts resources from confronting the CCP, who he calls the single greatest threat to our national security.
These efforts are really just the tip of the iceberg.
The call comes amid heightened alert on the long arm of the Chinese regime. Just weeks ago, the DOJ charged 5 people with acting on behalf of Beijing to stalk, harass, and spy on Chinese dissidents in the U.S., including a congressional candidate in New York.
For decades, the Chinese Communist Party has targeted, harassed, and threatened U.S.-based Tibetans, Uyghurs, Falun Gong members, and pro-democracy activists. And now, as if that weren't offensive enough, the government of China has targeted the campaign of a candidate for Congress.
And just earlier this week, the DOJ charged another man for acting as an unregistered agent for Beijing in the United States. He's accused of enlisting others, including a U.S. law enforcement officer, to spy on and blackmail targets here specified by the communist regime. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
Over the last decade, the Chinese regime has been repeatedly and credibly accused of killing Falun Gong practitioners and other prisoners of conscience for their organs. Now, a new study published in one of the top U.S. medical journals can be added to the mounting body of evidence. Here are the details.
A paper published in the American Journal of Transplantation on Monday lays out evidence that doctors in China removed organs for transplants from living humans and killed them in the process. According to the study, the authors reviewed thousands of Chinese medical publications written by transplant surgeons on heart and lung procurement. They identified 71 papers published between 1980 and 2015, in which physicians describe removing an organ from a donor without first performing a required test to establish brain death. The report states that declaration of brain death is a standard requirement before removing organs from a donor, which in these cases wasn't done. The study also notes that Chinese doctors ceased publishing such papers after 2015. In addition, the report found other irregular practices which indicate the surgeon's subjects were still alive throughout the procedure. Research co-author Dr. Jacob Levy says this shows, in the words of the physicians themselves, that they prioritized organ procurement over adhering to the most basic medical oath, first do no harm. The report also points to the unusually short wait times for organs in China as further evidence that organs are removed from live victims. The study builds on mounting research from groups like the China Tribunal, an independent tribunal that determined in 2019 that Beijing was forcibly harvesting organs from prisoners of conscience. The tribunal further stated that Falun Gong practitioners have been one and probably the main source of organ supply. Uyghur Muslims were also identified as victims of the practice.
Next, we'd like to address one of our audience's frequently asked questions. Some have written to us wondering why the Chinese Communist Party persecutes Falun Gong, a spiritual meditation practice. The Chinese regime has been persecuting Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, for 23 years, since summer 1999. Those who practice the system are abducted, imprisoned, detained in labor camps, tortured, and even suffer forced organ harvesting. Their deaths are largely known to supply China's booming organ transplant market. But why did Beijing launch the persecution campaign? Before it began, Falun Gong saw wild popularity throughout China, spread through word of mouth. At its peak, 100 million people were practicing there, a number higher than the Communist Party's membership roster. The party views any group bigger than itself as a threat to its rule. On top of that, Falun Gong teaches the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, and puts importance on improving moral character. These values differ greatly from what the regime stands for. Top party authorities fear that if many people follow Falun Gong's principles, they will reject the CCP, as well as its communist ideology and state-sanctioned atheism. Despite that thinking, Falun Gong has no political goals and doesn't belong to a political party. The meditation practice is one of what Chinese tradition calls energy practices or Qigong practices. Dozens of energy practices are banned in China. Other forms of spirituality are also suppressed, including religious beliefs like Christianity and Buddhism.
Lemon water is a great way to start the day. Here's Gina Marie, who brings us Strong Mind and Body.
Welcome to Strong Mind and Body. I'm Gina Marie. Did you know that lemons have more potassium than apples and grapes? This interesting fact is just one of the many reasons why drinking lemon juice every morning can impact your health. Starting your day with lemon juice is an excellent way to boost vitality, increase energy, and cleanse out your system. The first thing you put in your body each day can have a big impact on your productivity and mood. That's why it's recommended to start the day with a warm glass of lemon water. You can use anywhere from 1/2 to a whole lemon each morning. So let's look at 9 benefits. Number 1, boosts your immune system. Since lemon juice is filled with vitamin C, it provides a natural and powerful source of immune health. When you are tired, stressed, or overworked, vitamin C levels are the first to go down. Number 2, supports digestion. In addition to supporting health digestion, lemon juice helps rid the intestinal tract of toxins. Lemons are filled with vitamins and minerals which help to alleviate things like heartburn and bloating. Number 3, cleans out your system. Lemon juice is packed with powerful vitamins and minerals that flush harmful toxins from your system. Number 4, decreases inflammation. Much disease stems from inflammation, and drinking lemon juice frequently helps reduce the acidity in your body. That helps decrease inflammation. Number 5, helps to improve weight loss. Lemon juice contains a lot of pectin fiber which helps fight hunger cravings. Number 6, clears up your skin. Because lemon juice is high in antioxidants, the vitamin C helps to decrease blemishes and wrinkles. The overall detoxifying nature of lemons also contributes to clear skin. Number 7, helps to fight infections. A glass of warm lemon water is perfect to help fight off infections. Not only does it boost your immune system, it helps to prevent things like sore throats brought on by viral infections. Number 8, gives you an energy boost. As lemon juice improves digestion, it provides your body with an energy boost when it enters your digestive tract. And number 9, excellent source of potassium. Potassium is important for brain, nerve, and heart health, and lemon juice is filled with it. Add lemon water to your daily routine to start the day with a detoxifying and refreshing warm drink. You won't regret incorporating this powerful anti-inflammatory beverage into your life.